In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how to perform work and analysis on a remote operating system, which in this case will be running Linux. We're going to do that through the use of FTP and also secure connection technologies such as SSH. Normally, servers exist in a remote location like a data center, and we need a way to remotely access the server. We don't want to have to physically make a trip to the data center every time we need to do something, maybe to back something up or to check the status of our server. But by using SSH and also FTP, you'll have the ability to remotely administer the server, and I'll show you how to do that. There's two applications of that we'll be looking at. One is SSH and the other is FTP. SSH is called Secure Shell, and using a shell or terminal emulator with SSH, you can access the server like you're sitting right in front of the computer in the data center. There's two popular flavors of SSH. One is OpenSSH and the other is just SSH. In this example, we're going to look at OpenSSH. And then the other area that we're going to look at today is FTP, and that stands for File Transfer Protocol. And that allows us to send and receive files between a remote server and our local desktop. Alright, so let's get started. In this tutorial, I have two servers. I have a Ubuntu desktop and a Ubuntu server, both running in VMware. So I can cycle back and forth between them. So here's my server, and here's my local desktop. Going to start off by logging into my workstation, my remote server. And again, this is my remote server. Now I will log into my desktop. I'll go back to our server, and the first thing we want to do is start installing the software. So we want to install OpenSSH. We'll do that by running superuser app.get install OpenSSH. Okay, so it could not find the package OpenSSH because we did something wrong. We should have done OpenSSH server. And then the next thing we'll want to do is to make sure that the firewall is down. We're going to be communicating over port 22. If the firewall was up, then we'd want to make sure that we would open up port 22. This doesn't take very long. Okay, that's done. So we'll check the status of our firewall. We'll do superuser do UFW status. Alright, so the firewall is down. That's a good thing. If the firewall was up, we would want to open up port 22. So we would do superuser do UFW allow 22. And then that would open up port 22. Alright, we're just about done. The next thing we want to do is we want to get the IP address of our computer. So we'll do IP not ipconfig, that would be for Windows. We want to do if config. My IP address is 192.168.170.137. And this IP address would be used by a client to connect to my workstation. I'm now connected to my workstation, the client, logged on, and I will want to install the SSH client software, and I'll do that by running superuserdo app-get install open SSH client. And now for the big step, let's log on. So again, let's just summarize. Right now we're on the client workstation. We're running the desktop version of Ubuntu. And we want to remotely administer our server. So we don't want to have to take that long trip to the data center, log on and see what's going on with the server. We want to do it right from our desktop. And we'll do that in the shell. We'll do SSH, put in our username, and then the IP address. If you remember, it was 192.168.170.137. And yes, I'm sure I want to connect. The password. And I am logged on. That's pretty cool. What's really slick about this is now we have 2 users logged on to that server. It's a little bit different than Windows, where you have 1 user logged on. In this case, with Linux, we can have multiple users logged on. We'll do a ls. All right, I have no files. What we're going to do next, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to use the vi editor. I'm going to call it test. I'll call it this is a test. And then we'll save it. Do a list. And there's my file. So I just created a new file. Now we're going to cycle over to our server, and again, this user is the same user as my other user. So if I do a ls, I see that file. Now, just to summarize here, we have 2 users. They're both logged on to the workstation, and it's the same user. We're going to do something a little bit different now. And we're going to cycle back to the desktop. We're going to exit out of here. And then we're going to exit out again. Oh wait, we'll stay in the session. This is my initial shell command. So I logged off the server. Now we'll go back to the server and we're going to create a user. Super user do add user. We'll call him student. Okay, we just created a new user. Now let's cycle back to our desktop and let's log on again, except this time we're going to log on as student. Okay, so now I'm logged on as student, and if you list the directory here, you do not see my test file. But if we go back to the workstation and we list it, we do see the test file because these are two separate users. That's it for SSH. Remember, SSH is secure shell, and using the shell or terminal emulator with SSH, you can access the server like you're sitting right in front of it. Now, what if we wanted to send files between our desktop and our server? We can do that using FTP, which is File Transfer Protocol. The first thing we need to do to get FTP up and running is to install the FTP software on the server. The software that we're going to be using on the server is called VSFTPD. Again, it's VSFTPD, which stands for Very Secure FTP Daemon. To start that off, we're going to do superuser-do app-get install VSFTPD, and that will install the Very Secure FTP Daemon. So I just executed the clear command and cleared my screen. And right now, everything would work just fine, but there's one thing we want to do, and we want to check the configuration file for our server, for our FTP server. So we want to do superuser-do. We're going to edit it using vi. We're going to edit the configuration file, which resides in etc. Superuser-do vi etc vsftpd.conf. And this is our, again, this is our configuration file for the server. There's really two important things we want to check. Local enabled equals yes. That feature allows clients to log on. If there's a pound in front of this line, then that means it's commented out and the feature would not be applicable. The other feature we want is write enabled equals yes. Write enabled equals yes allows clients to upload files to the server. So that could be a bit dangerous. If you want to disable that feature, then you could just leave this commented out. But we're going to enable this feature, and then we're going to save the file. Now that the file has been saved, we need to restart the FTP service, and we're going to do that using superuser-do service vsftpd restart. And it's restarted. Now we're all set, so a client can FTP files to our server. There's a number of really nice FTP client applications that have a really nice graphical interface, graphical user interface. One of them is FTP client, or should I say FileZilla. FileZilla is great, and that's one that I use all the time. But if you don't want to use a graphical client, you can just do straight FTP. So here I'm logged on to my desktop workstation, my client, and I'm going to just type FTP. And we're going to open up a connection. We're going to give it the IP address of our workstation, which was 192.192.168.170.137, and we'll do student. And we're logged on. So now I can, using FTP, transfer files between the client and the server. There's, again, there's like other graphical user interfaces which you can use, like FileZilla, but This is a